before our sewer discussion begins.
Okay.
How's that? So call the meeting to order on the, what's today, the 6th? Finance Committee, 4 o'clock. Seeing nobody from the public, I assume there's no public comment, unless you all, the two of you, would like to make public comment.
We should start.
We only have the room for 2 hours, so I'm not sure.
Well, I'm only going to give you 4 minutes apiece.
Okay. We're good then. Yield my time back to the chairman.
Chair, thank you. So we've got, Libby, thank you for updating the warrant, or whomever did it. If you didn't.
Early morning version?
Mm-hmm.
They got the 3 o'clock.
Yep.
Set it out
It was at 3
before I
o'clock.
came to the meeting.
Yep, 3 o'clock's right here.
All right, so since I sent that early email, do we have 11? Is 11 in?
We have, I sent it to Erica to include.
I don't know if it's in or not.
Let me, just looked at the 3.
Okay.
Okay, so 11 needs to get in, so we have to figure out how to deal with that. 12, the engineer and Rob are on their way right now. 35 just needs your finalization.
Yep.
I need to get the planning board comment from Andrew, which you don't want to carry on. And 88, I just wanted you to look at that comment and make sure that's what you like.
Okay.
Make sure you do it.
Very good. So why don't we, can we work backwards and start with 88?
Yeah.
And,
I can forward the article from what I sent to her this morning, Jack.
so are there any comments on, have we,
I think you meant 87, Libby, not
I'm
88.
sorry, yes.
Yes,
87.
because 88 is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Fine by me.
My phone can't span quick enough.
Here's the comment. Whoops.
Oh, that's the industrial one.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
There's the comment. Did you see?
Yep.
Fast reader.
Well,
Everybody-
as we said last, Evelyn Redhead sped.
she made a good little
We speed read.
Yeah, it looks okay.
Looks fine. Doesn't need an S at the end.
To meet community
You
need.
don't want to, what? So Peter, just to catch you up, we had a little discussion.
To meet
Part of
community
the
needs.
challenge
You
is
go either way. Collect the
bandwidth
Yeah,
on part of the
yeah,
town to
I
actually
think
do
so.
this and figure it out. So I think when we arrive at it,
To meet
before the
community needs.
selectmen
To meet
get
community
these
need.
property,
Either way, it
they
could be.
will have a plan on how
It
this
could go
thing
either way.
I could go either way. I
is
mean,
going to take place.
Okay.
no.
Sounds
it's
more,
to meet community
ensuring that the
needs
town is
or
properly
allow-
Sounds more like an official legal language.
Needs
Hmm.
or need.
Either one.
I think either one works.
Both ways.
I would think so. As you like.
Maybe change ensure to affect. If they affect the development of a plan. We're nitpicking. I think it's fine. Yeah.
In short. In short.
No, I wanted to
Ensure.
replace ensure with effect.
Affect the development of a comprehensive plan?
Yeah.
No.
You don't want to affect the development?
I want to ensure it.
Yeah, if you want to ensure
Thump.
that it's done.
Yeah. Well, not affect.
No.
Effect.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
you
think
don't wanna
ensure
do
is
that.
stronger.
You do.
I personally do, but I'm
Okay.
willing to be open to affecting the change to affect.
Yeah. I think affecting change or affecting something is
The Board of
more
Selectmen
than ensure.
affect the development, ensure
Yeah.
the development. Mandate the development. Boom.
It's only a recommendation anyway. Probably doesn't matter what we recommend. It will be at the top of the stack or it won't be.
To ensure. No, as, I could go either way.
Yeah.
I like ensure, but I can live with
Okay,
effect.
let's leave it as it is.
Okay, we don't have to vote on this. Thank you very much for putting it together.
We're good?
Mhm.
Yeah, we've already voted the article,
Okay.
subject to this comment. Okay?
As written.
Right, we're gonna agree to that?
Yeah. Joe, did you bring some?
I brought a couple of copies. I also sent it to Libby earlier today. Remember to keep one this time. The only, I might not have one for everybody, but.
We can share if you don't mind.
So this is what I sent David, you and Stephen last night. There's one small change that Libby inserted in number 4, the word mailing prior to address. And it needs, I don't know what the right number is for that comment about how many millions of dollars. I put in 35 in capital projects. I'm not sure what the right number is there.
Brian gave me the number.
It should be 7 and 28, so
It's this number, the six, oh gee, I don't know if you got it, 66
It's-
million.
yeah, it's pretty close. It's 35, because 28 is,
Yeah, we put it like, I can tell you, it's actually 31 million is general fund alone. And then,
yeah, but I think then we can include the sewer stuff just because,
The 66,053,045 contains general fund and enterprise cap.
yeah.
Is that
So you
what
want-
you want?
And that's what we want, because Dickler's proposal is not, it's not just general fund.
Okay.
So you want 66 million instead of 35 million?
Well, we've got 3 buckets now. We've got the enterprise capital,
Yeah.
which is 20,
34,250.
and that includes the
That
current,
includes, what was that?
the current sewer.
Yes, that's with the 5.3 that's in there
Okay.
for the sewer force main.
And out of free cash, another 6.
Yeah, so out of the general fund, there's 31 million, which is 7 million in Article 10. And then the other articles total about 24 million, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18.
So we're at $40 million.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
And that's the number, I wasn't sure, that's the number you want here, the general fund capital expenditures, leaving aside enterprise funds.
No, I think you have to include the enterprise numbers, because he's not differentiating them, and he's talking about a variety of things like our island home.
So, Brian, but the all-in
So
number
we're-
is 66.
The all-in number is 66, so I took Articles 10 and 12,
Yep.
added those two together, and then took Articles 14, 15, all the borrowing articles that are individually identified, and came to 31 and 34, and some change, we got to 66. So that's how I got there.
Okay.
We can break it out individually in a different way if that pleases the committee, but that's how I got to
Yeah,
66.
just confuse people.
But he's talking about raising $30 million and spending it in that year, not, I mean, some of these projects are being spent over the lifetime of bonds. They're 20 or 30 years.
Right, but we wouldn't be able to raise 35 million and pay for every project out of cash. We'd still borrow what he was saying, or part of what his focal point was, that I could raise the 35 million, and even if you have to borrow, you don't have to do debt exclusions or anything, because I can pay for it with this override. So there was still a component of long-term borrowing out of the 35 million, potentially.
So he's not talking about raising $30 million in a given year.
He's talking about raising 35 million.
So he
every
is,
single year.
but the capital projects that we're talking about, those aren't outflows in this fiscal year.
Well, they're borrowings in this fiscal year. Well, they're
Agreed,
borrowing.
but that's not the same thing, because we'll get $30 million, I mean, under Mr. Dickler or Dr. Dickler's plan, we'll get $30 million this year, and then $30 million the next year, and $30 million the next year.
Yeah.
That's not the same as what we're talking about here, is it?
Well, for this
I
current
mean, we're talking
year,
about
next year.
obligating ourselves to $40 million, but we're not spending $40 million this year, and then $40 million again next year, and then $40 million again next year. right?
Technically, we could spend the 40 million this year.
We're gonna.
We
we're-
could,
We're gonna
technically,
obligate
right.
ourselves
Right.
in the form of a raise to, assuming the timing works, but to whatever the 66
$66
million this
We're
year.
obligating to spend $66 million at town meeting.
And
provided
next
they-
year, we could come back with a new sewer line, you know, for 25 million, and that would be an additional, you know, we'd spend another 25 plus whatever we spend on additional, next
Right.
year's capital items.
I just think that, you know, these are two different things. You're talking about raising and being able to spend $30 million this year and $30 million next year, and you're saying, well, we already do that. We're already spending more than that. And I think that it's not the same thing.
No,
Because
but isn't the point that the town is able to appropriate and fund the $66 million in capital expenditures, and people aren't, no one's having a conniption fit or you know, sweating bullets about how we're going to finance this. It's just business as usual, so.
you know, I think you've made that point in different ways every time this has come up, and I disagree. You know, we have charts where we talk about how many cups of coffee people are giving up. You know, we do talk about the price of things. We don't never talk about it. Every time the sewers come up, we have Brian put together very complicated models for how it's going to affect everybody. Because I think that in the past, maybe until this article's come up, we have considered that there's a limit to how much people want to spend. Maybe not how much the town can borrow, but how much we spend.
And I don't disagree, and I think that's actually a good constraint on what we do. And part of the problem sort of gets back to number one in this, right? Part of the problem with his proposal is by raising an extra 30 million ad infinitum without any particular target for what the spending is on, he's just putting money into the pockets of town government, with due respect, and saying, you know, we trust you guys, just do whatever you need to do. You have plenty of money now. That's not the same thing as having to fight over every project or sewer line or whatever. I feel like I'm not being terribly articulate about it, but I mean, that's... I mean, I don't disagree with you, Stephen. You know, that's not what... The 66 million that's in this comment is not the same as the way he's trying to raise revenue. He's raising unobligated revenue.
Yeah, he's not gonna go and borrow it. He's
Right.
gonna just raise the tax rate.
Right. And I think on the one hand, you're saying, well, we don't need the money. And then on the other hand, you're saying we're spending more than that. So I don't think that we're being clear about, you know, what the problems are with his article. I don't think this does a good job of breaking down for the layperson who's going to open this up for the first time 48 hours before town meeting what the problems are with his proposal.
Let me throw out another odd idea I had about this. What about sending this into the paper prior to town meeting? Letter from the chairman of the Finance Committee.
Do you think you should say more or less, or do you still think it makes it clear enough? Or do you think it's just confusing?
I don't have any problem with the number of words. I mean, I said yesterday, I like how much space in the paper or in the warrant this is going to take up, but I don't think that this makes the issue more clear.
The sentence or two that mentions the 66 million. We could take it out, just go back to the prior version.
Yeah, I mean, if everybody else feels that that's relevant and helps people understand what we're talking about, I'm not going to, vote against the comment. I like the comment. I like the action that we took. I don't know any other way to say it than I don't think that we're making it more clear for people.
Let's take out the finance, the
Yeah.
parade comment.
The
The
in an
parens.
italics.
Yeah, just because
Yep.
confuse everybody. simpler is clearly better.
Mhm. I think the fact that it states that the voters vote for stuff that they believe is, worth voting for versus.
Yeah, and if on the day when the article's called, because it will be called, I mean, at that point, David, I'm guessing you could always stand up and say, for example, folks, the total that you're appropriating this year is in this, here's the ballpark number. So it's not a question of not willing to spend or not, having a impetus to spend.
I mean, the explanation verbally has got to be, I don't mean this pejoratively, but dumbed down. This is too sophisticated a comment to get up and verbally make.
Yes,
So
yes.
flows that would work on the town meeting would be a simpler version, given that most people aren't going to have insights that spend much time thinking about this.
Okay, so we're taking out the sentence in parens, and other than that,
Yeah.
And that looks good.
Can everybody get rally around that?
Mm-hmm.
Sure, yeah, I was comfortable if you wanted to leave it in. I was just, making a point, but.
If it makes it confusing, it should come out.
Yeah.
It would,
It's fair.
Yeah, let's not
it's
confuse.
just one opinion. I mean, I really think that Joe's put a lot of work into this, and if it makes sense to everybody but me, then maybe it makes sense.
No,
I can see where taking it out will make
I
it
think you raise a
clear.
fair point.
People value your opinion, so don't.
Well, I also don't want to just, run in late, make a loud point, and now everybody backs off it. That wasn't my point either.
Well, but I think you made a good point. I mean, the point that the sentence with the 66 million is not, and I think I liked it because I thought it was a way of sort of carrying a message to the voters that, see, we're raising 66 million and, we're not breaking a sweat, so to speak, doing it. So the town has plenty of financial capability. But you're also quite right that what he's trying to do in terms of raising extra tax revenue and the fact that we can appropriate and then fund through borrowing and fees and whatever, they're not really the same thing. It's just we're making 2 points. The voters, I was hoping they would sort of connect them and say, oh, 66 million, see what?
Right.
We're doing this all the time.
It's all fruit, but it's apples and bananas.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
You can use that on
If
the
you
floor at
understand
town
it that way.
meeting.
There you go.
Just to mess with them.
We need a chart for that.
All right. So
I got
if we're comfortable with it, we've already voted the article, so Libby, you're good.
Got it.
Okay.
What do you think about a letter to the paper?
Let's. Can we
You
go
wanna
back to
get
that
to that
before?
stuff? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
because I. Just,
You could put it right next to his ads.
That's what everything.
Yes, it's so helpful.
Mr. McNeil, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Man of the hour.
You're here to talk about the new DPW garage?
Yeah,
Like the way you think.
it's going to be on South Beach Street.
Isn't it already?
Kind of looks it, doesn't it?
Now, does the town buy the dorms from the outlet? Is that what?
That's in the works.
We're transplanting shrubs next Monday.
That's what they're using the 30 million for. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks.
Thank you. Looks better in color.
Well, it's easy to read on 11 minutes.
Thank you.
Are these two different? No, I guess I just got an extra copy.
2-page ones.
Yeah, did you get 2 ones out of 2?
Rob, I sent what I got from UPG last night.
Yes. Yeah, so this is revised.
Okay.
Let me get a picture.
And that's why we're a couple minutes behind the 4 o'clock hour. Just trying to get all the final numbers square.
Where's my bench?
Thank you.
Sell
Oh, it's gonna be
memberships
one of those days.
closer to the street.
There's Peter's car.
All right, so
No, I don't park there.
So the initial response essentially was a combination of vendors from everyone in support of the sewer department to get this thing under control. And then it sort of morphed into get the cost to switch the bypass over to the second force main. So just to back up, in case you didn't know, there's 2 different force mains from C Street to the treatment plant. The one that runs along South Beach and sort of runs through the core and then out Union to Washington Street. Union to Orange and out that way. It basically failed down on South Beach Street. The contractor was called in to cut over, because it had been cut over to that alignment to isolate the C Street pump station. It had been on a temporary pump system for a number of months. So it was hard piped that way. Before the project started at C Street, it was interchangeable. The pumps were set up to be able to go to either force main. So the second force main that goes up and over Chipping Hill, which is basically the opposite direction on C Street, up and over the hill, and then down Surfside to get to the treatment plant. That was brought to bear immediately following the break. So that was, as soon as that was put back online and operational, then we started the cleanup. And the cleanup consisted of everything from hiring EPG, Paul Valentier from EPG, the engineering firm that helped us out with this, to physically cleaning the street and the sidewalks in the affected area. Again, the critical decision that was made to discharge through the yacht club into the harbor. And thank you again. Can't say enough about what the yacht club's been able to do for the town for that. But that saved us having this sewage event back up into homes and businesses, which would have been the case had that not been able to find a place to discharge. So there's been a lot of intricate details to this, but the costs associated with it are real and certainly something that we need to bear. We've been cognizant of that from day one. Once this thing's been under control, let's say, and we're focused on getting the line that failed repaired and back online, sort of to back up a step and say, it's not as simple as going in and repairing the line. In order for that line to be brought back up and become operational again, the engineers signing off on it need to be confident that it's going to in fact function. So rather than just simply go in, and it's not simple in any way, shape, or form, down on South Beach Street, for reasons I'll explain, it was more, we need to take a look at the entirety of the 3.5 miles of force main. So that was quite a project to go, and within, I think, a week, the project was conceptualized and put out to bid, or let's say quoted through the expedited process, approved through the IG's office. So we were able to get 3 competitive qualified contractors to compete, which was impressive in and of itself. And we got a qualified contractor, Robert Biauer, who's already been working in town on some sewer projects, to step to the plate and take this on. It should be, just a side note, what's interesting was one of the other bidders became a sub to the prime. So it's actually it worked out well that two of the people that were willing to help out actually were able to get involved. So this consisted of essentially cutting and isolating sections of the force main over its entirety. So it was cutting into the pipe, cleaning it out, and then putting a pipe camera down in both directions to take a look at the condition of the pipe. And so interestingly, over the 3.5 mile length, there were 5 locations, including the break that occurred on South Beach, 5 total locations that were actually in need of repair, that had some breach of the plastic, in one manner or other. So it was very healthy, and that's another reason why that entire thing was done, to look for things that might have been occurring that we did not know about. This line was originally put in service in 1932. And then it was lined. It was originally a cast iron main. It was then lined back in the 80s. And their report will, their final report will come out once they have, project has been finally pulled together and completed. But it's been very methodic, but yet very expeditious, both from the engineering side of things as well as the construction end of things. The pipe, we've learned a tremendous amount, I think, through this process, and it's going to, I think, really help moving forward all the utilities in town to really truly understand how to, or what to be looking for with regard to the easements involved, maintaining easements, maintaining, understanding where construction's been occurring in and around the pipes. So it's been eye-opening, and how the truck route now, the 2 truck routes play into the critical role of essentially providing services to the island, and how locating utilities or replacing utilities in those corridors probably not the best idea. The good news is we haven't seen the massive tens of millions expected to replace this main yet. The repair is happening, and it's been happening. This line will be returned into service, but it's unclear at this point if it's going to be allowed or recommended to be returned to full service. That said, it will return to some level of service, and whatever level of service it is, it's expected to remain in service for a very few limited number of years until it can be replaced. And the plan is not to be replaced back in the same alignment, but we've already started to conceptualize what that new alignment would be and where it would go to ultimately avoid, number one, the major truck routes, to make sure that those systems wouldn't disrupt service to the rest of the critical parts of the island. So just a little bit of backstory. So I want to leave the commission also the latest plans that show all the pit locations, pictures of the actual breaks along the line from the pipe camera. This naming, numbering convention for each pit is pretty clearly noted, and that's what we've been using out in the field. So this is the latest set as of today. The project should be wrapping up within the next couple of weeks ahead of schedule. So with that, that sort of covers we're still getting working on the biggest invoice from the early work was Clean Harbors. They did send initially a draft invoice that Brian and I have reviewed that we've kicked back to them and asked for more clarification. So I literally got back off the phone. A guy finally called me back on my drive here from DPW. So I do expect the final invoice from Clean Harbors to be in hand tomorrow. Beyond that, there's some other ancillary smaller numbers from vendors that supported the efforts of the initial response. Pump trucks, stuff that was here and then on standby and helping us through the event. We have Environmental Partners Group, our engineer, through technical services. And then the pipeline assessment and repair, right at the hour. Those are fixed contracts that were signed and right now are working towards completion, which we expect to occur in the next couple of weeks. And then on to roadway restoration. So the plan that I handed out is essentially the South Beach Street from C Street to Broad, and then South Beach Extension over to Oak. If you went down to the site, you would have seen the test pits that occurred starting from C Street and making its way down South Beach, down South Beach Extension, and then one on Oak right next to the Dreamland. And there was others along the way, but the areas that are going to need extensive and complete pavement and sidewalk restoration through that area. So the plan that was the breakdown of costs on the two 11 by 17 sheets are basically the the 11A versus 11B, option 1 versus option 2. So option 1, option 1 or 11A for 1.278 is restoring the roadway to the existing conditions, and then the difference there is the 1.668 for option 2, which is recognizing that and we have an opportunity when we go in this unique situation. South Beach Street, the extension, and Oak, we're not on any improvement plan. So sort of a unique opportunity to take a look at it and say, okay, now it needs to be reconstructed. And yes, we could easily go right back the way it was, but we're in the process of doing sidewalk improvements downtown. We're in the process of always looking at new concepts.
And you're speaking so everyone knows dimensionally.
Mm-hmm.
Correct? Dimensionally, you're going back to where it was yesterday.
Yes.
Dimensions.
As opposed to?
No, I just want to make sure they understood.
Okay. So, again, I mean, it's not as simple as restoring the street, because that's not a simple job. It seems like it looks great out there, but the pavement in a lot of locations where the break occurred and upstream and downstream of the break, the pavement was actually floating. There was a lot of voids under the pavement originally, which forced us to close the road. And then when we have other pictures, we can certainly send around, but you had a chance to look at any of the pits on South Beach to kind of give you a understanding of the complexity of what we were dealing with, from the pavement down to the sewer gravity force main, the sewer gravity line. There was a nest of utilities, some crossing each other, some, and most of them were very critical. We had the gravity sewer, we had the force main, we had the two island power cables, the marine cables that come up and come through downtown. We have the communication lines that feed us from the Cape, and we have a number of other ancillary feeder cables in the neighborhood, both communications and power. So all this stuff was in this really dense area, made it very difficult to work in and around and ultimately be able to get in to repair the pipe. And that was the easy part. The hard part was dealing with the high groundwater because the proximity to the ocean. So we're dealing with sand, and because it's so porous, anytime you open the groundwater's at 2 feet down there during normal fluctuating tides. And so you had to artificially lower that by doing dewatering in any of those locations that we needed to. Again, thankfully, the yacht club allowed us easy access to discharge that clean groundwater as we were able to take it out. to artificially lower the groundwater to allow the excavation to occur and to get into effective repairs. So it was high intense and very complex work in that corridor downtown, as opposed to getting outside of downtown to high ground. If we got to like the campus of the fire station, for instance, that same force main is buried at 1.5 feet below grade. Wow. So we scraped up the grass and the pipe was right there. So very easy access.
Without groundwater.
No groundwater, a small little fenced-in area, not even the size of this area here. Easy access to the pipe, and contractors able to get in there, do his job very quickly. And so we saw on the tail end of the project, most of that was fairly easy. However, when you get across Surfside onto the old sewer bed road, which is now an easement to the plant, sort of parallels South Shore, and it sort of converges together coming into the plant. It hasn't been touched since the 80s probably, when this thing was lined and had to be cut open to put the liner pipe in. So mature trees, you can tell where this easement is roughly, because the growth is not as mature as next to it, but it's as if you're walking through the woods out there. So this goes through people's backyards. In one location, we found the pipe under a house. These are some of the complex realities that we've come across.
As-built.
There's
Who's on the planning board?
So there's some real challenges that we're still faced with even after getting this squared away, which again leads us down the path of, finding the modern location this pipe should go, and ultimately either finding a new use, like a different utility corridor for this alignment. We've talked about trying to find a different use for it, like communication cables or something like that Verizon or some other carrier might take advantage of that, that pipeline to be able to utilize something like that, or stormwater or something like that. But so again, the delta here is really for the reconstruction of the road. Is really just saying, okay, instead of putting back that narrow 18 feet that's there, we priced out the cost to restore the road as is versus restore the road the way we are recommending. The Board of Selectmen voting on this option tomorrow night.
Okay, that was my question.
And that basically means we would go from a 18-foot roadway for South Beach between Broad and C Street to a 20-foot. So it's widening the road 2 feet, holding the west edge along the Whaling Museum to Cook's Cycles, holding that edge.
The curb.
The curb line, thank you, and moving the curb closer to the yacht club side by 2 feet. And so,
Which is town land.
It's town land. We found that the yacht club was encroaching slightly on property lines with
Sustainably.
Get out a chainsaw.
Landscaping. So again, we've been working very closely with them through this whole thing, and so in the end, we're going to try to gain back adequate sidewalk widths on both sides as well. And so the delta you see in the two estimates for restoration is essentially that. It's dealing with widening there. And then the plan shows in red where we're looking for extra width or different treatment. On South Beach Extension, you'll see that whole red stripe that runs the length of it. That's intended to be a new brick feature that'll be flush with the pavement to provide essentially a home for pedestrians if a car comes while they're walking down there. Right now, it's so not to bore you with the planning features of it, but this is the plan was sort of the compromise between the first aggressive option of widening the street and consolidating the sidewalk to a single side and just making it a wide single sidewalk, and putting it back to exactly the way it is now. Which result is probably not the best way to go, because again, with this one opportunity, it's 18 feet is just not adequate for that. It's a reverse truck route.
Are you going to repave South Beach?
Repave South Beach?
Yes.
The limits of paving would go from C Street all the way to South Water
Okay.
on both Oak and Broad.
Mhm.
So the difference that you see here, which is about 400,000,
394.
it's about 400,000 delta. Basically, the work on Broad Street would, under the restore as is, essentially just crosses the street. It goes between the existing crosswalks through Broad Street. The work between the juice bar and the sunken ship and the whaling museum, that stretch of Broad Street is all considered extra, not part of restoration.
I mean, I ask about the resurfacing only. If you're going to make the sidewalks narrower, there are an awful lot of areas where the water ponds on that street, and cars do not slow down for pedestrians.
No.
And if you can't get further away from the street, you're going to get very wet.
That's because they're yacht club members.
You know what?
That's
Well,
what it is.
one thing that we recognize is that the street itself, South Beach is the primary focus because that's where all the traffic is.
Only kidding.
South Beach Extension is less so, but South Beach Street itself, one thing that we're looking to try to improve drainage down there by is to really put an aggressive crown on the road, which is going to get the water shed and fill it up and start to have it run down the gutter. But at the same time, to raise, primarily to improve pedestrian access around, but to raise the intersection at Broad to be more like a four-way flush pedestrian access, which would also allow us to get a little bit of pitch on the water to the different catch basins that exist out there. So I think a combination.
I mean, don't underestimate. I mean, it's a real problem for pedestrians when it's raining on
Sure.
that street.
Sure.
And the cars don't mean harm, but they just.
Well,
don't
some of
slow
them
down.
probably do.
Well, I'm sure some do, but, yeah. So I think just making sure that the drainage is.
It's definitely, according to what we're planning, if constructed that way, it should improve drainage.
Okay.
Robin, maybe this is a question of Brian. Brian, you had raised some concerns about procedure. Sorry, he's talking. No. You had raised some concerns from a procedural standpoint on bidding and whatnot. With the delta being the way it is, do you have those concerns about that, call it the kind of the new improvement part?
So I know you asked Brian.
Yeah, no, I
We're
asked both.
coordinating, and I'm happy to answer that. I
Okay.
would say that recognizing that the delta is not something that's part of an emergency appropriation in any way, our plan is to handle this through the existing appropriation for sidewalk improvements.
Perfect.
As well as island-wide roadway
Perfect.
improvements.
So now everyone feels much more comfortable.
Well, that, or we can wait until a town meeting appropriation.
No.
And then start the work.
No,
If you prefer that.
no. No, I want to make sure that you're comfortable.
A couple of questions, Rob. Are you guys at any point where you know whether this is going to be an insurance claim that's going to be satisfied?
That is definitely a Brian question.
We are at a point where we have submitted everything. The insurance company was out here, one of the adjusters, the engineer consultant firm was here. They took possession of the pipe as they were allowed to under the contract, under chain of custody, had the testing. We have a provision within the policy that talks about within 1,000 feet of an insured structure. Correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, but I am very certain that this falls well within 1,000 feet of C Street, where the breach was occurred.
Big break wasn't within.
So, I can't sit here today and tell you absolutely that we have insurance, but we have provided everything that they have asked for, along with our pollution carrier, to potentially get any reimbursement for all of the contamination cleanup, remediation work. We're supplying them as they ask all of the documentation, so I hope that we do, but I can't tell you for certain that we absolutely do at this point. But if we got it back, it would just reduce the amount that we actually borrowed at the end.
So 1,000 feet from C Street, pump station.
The coverage extends to there, and the break was within the 1,000 foot.
Good, from C Street.
Yeah.
Gotcha, thank you.
You mentioned other breaks or weaknesses that you discovered, I think 5 of them when you did your camera. Any diagnostic as to what's causing them?
My name is Paul Mills from Environmental Partners. There's no immediate reason that's jumping out at us. Quite frankly, the old pipe was 90 years old. The newer pipe was put in 1982, so it's about 36 years old. A high-density pipe and pipe can last almost 50 years, so it's a 36 to 50-year lifespan. Some of the construction that we're uncovering was less than ideal, quite frankly. One of the breaks one of the compromises that we discovered was actually at the intersection of Main Street and South Water Street in the cobblestones, which would have been a disastrous break if it had happened. But it was a big 7-inch long fissure, like somebody had ripped the pipe from the inside. So there's no immediate answer why the pipe was compromised. The break on South Beach Street was a very clean break between 2 pipe joints. We are having the pipe tested in the lab to see if it's any chemical cancer. But I think at this time,
It's all one set.
yeah,
I
I think
apologize.
if I may just,
I get them back.
if you look at the very first sheet, sorry,
Yeah, maybe he's got the first one.
before that,
The first.
It's spread out.
That one,
page 1. Page 1?
is that
Yeah,
one?
sorry.
Yeah, no. This is pretty.
Sorry,
No, it's
I
fine.
screwed you up.
That's all right, I should
All
put a
right.
staple in.
I'm sorry, whoever's talking now, I get lost.
I'm sorry. Oh, I apologize.
Sorry.
So again, Paul Mills from Environmental Partners. Just to recap, the big break that was discovered was not actually where the water or surge was seen coming out of the ground. It was actually at a different location. So it was at hole what we call 1A on South Beach Street, and that was actually a very clean, almost like 2-inch gap between 2 pieces of pipe that were at one time joined together. So the pipe has been in service since 1982, so it's 36 years of useful life. We are having discrete pipe segments tested at a laboratory for any defects, but as I was saying, the further up the road at where South Water Street meets Main Street, in the cobblestones, we found a very large compromise, and thank God that didn't
Similar?
actually break. Yeah.
Similar in a
No,
lateral? or-
no, actually, it was like a 7-inch long gouge inside the pipe, but the pipe was resting again in a very dense utility area, and actually also the force main was actually resting on top of a big gravity sewer pipe and kind of haunching over it. So some of it was less than perfect construction 36 years ago. So we're trying to put together all the pieces here, but there's no immediate reason why it actually failed. At the location it failed, I mean, every indication is it was a combination of extreme adverse weather, freezing conditions. This pipe is a pipe inside a pipe, so the actual ground around the pipe could have frozen, and you have a warmer liquid inside the active pipe. So different temperatures lead to expansion and contraction, and it was a very clean break, quite frankly. But the fact that we discovered almost breaks at other locations and are rectifying them is a godsend, because otherwise, if we just fixed the one break and said, yes, you're fine, you're good to go, if there was a break at South Water and Union and Main Street, you would have had a big problem. Similarly, we found on each side of...
Actually, you would have had a big problem.
I would have had a big problem as an engineer, yes. But no, I mean that word. It would have been short-sighted. On each side of Korea Lane up here between, let's say, in the woods, if you will, on the way to the treatment plant, we found 2 or 3 defects as well. So they're all being... The bad pipe is being cut out, new pipe is being put in, welded appropriately, and backfilled carefully. Then, about a week and a half from now, we'll be filling up the pipe with water and doing what's called a pressure test, and testing the whole pipeline under pressure to make sure it holds pressure.
Could any of that come, those gases come from infiltrations of storm water that gets into the sewer line? Or is it literally that force main a piece that is you can't get into after South Beach? pump station.
The stormwater would get into the gravity sewer line, which then in turn flows to the pump station, which then is pumped.
So it would, if something did get into a gravity, it would kick it out at South Beach and not go into the force main as it leaves.
Most likely. I mean, it's
Yeah.
highly unlikely that some strange object got in there and caused all these problems in the pipe.
Is that like a heat welded seam?
Yeah,
seamless?
basically, yeah, it's a, yes, it's,
Yeah.
you basically, it's, you heat two pieces of plastic and you melt them together carefully, and it's a tight seal.
So, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I'm done.
Finish? You mentioned, or my question, I guess, is capacity in the force main for the summer. Are you going to have enough capacity when the summer group crowds are here?
It's a turnstile.
I don't believe I mentioned anything about summer capacity, but now that you brought it up, all I'm saying is that I know the C Street pump station work has been able to continue throughout this situation. The 20-inch force main is actively working properly. The one that's being repaired is expected to be returned to service as early as 2 weeks from now, and the schedule beyond that's really a question for David Gray moving forward with the C Street pump station. I don't know if anyone else here is aware of that that could speak to it specifically, but my understanding is that I believe it's anticipated to be completed fairly soon, the C Street pump station. Completion date? So May.
Yeah.
So it sounds like the
It's
C
also
Street
your
pump
project.
station should be back online and operational into one or two or both of the force mains before summer. That's the best I can answer that.
Rob, how old is the other force main, the one that goes up over Chicken
I believe that was in the early 90s.
1981.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay, 1981.
So,
Was it relined or it was first put in?
When it was first put in.
Yeah, that's
so it sounds like they put that in and then they
Correct.
relined.
that's a ductile iron
Yeah.
force main.
Which makes
When
sense.
you're rerouting, are you going to include other utilities? Or are you going to
Right now,
recommend that?
we're still at the very early stages of that. I would say we're already discussing other utilities at the same time, particularly drainage and water along the same corridor. But more importantly, we're trying to not necessarily let other capital projects drive the bus, but we're keeping those in mind, let's say, because we'd like to, if we've already identified specific capital improvements at the surface, it happens that if we choose between one street or the other, if we already had something that we were talked about, for instance, Pleasant Street sidewalk, then that happened to come up as a nice, handy corridor. And the other part of that was Main Street. Main Street is a complete mess in the cobblestones up above the bank. So we've already put some money together to start to do some cobblestone improvements up there, but at the same time, so the route that the early leader in the conceptual route, C Street, North Water to Broad, and then it's either Federal or Center across, and then up Main, down Pleasant, probably. There's been a couple different routes suggested at that point, but either Surfside, which is there's arguments one way that way, or out to Sparks and actually going down, I believe, Fairgrounds. It seems a little bit circuitous, but again, it's to try to make sure that we try to limit having two mains in the same location at the same time for reasons. We don't have issues if one does go. So that means we would try to bring to bear a single construction cycle that would come through, be highly disruptive, but at the same time, at the end of it, you get some of the surface improvements that we're looking to do as well.
So it would eventually come off Union Street then in what you've just described? So instead of,
It would definitely be taken away from South Beach and coming through lower, through the lower and the high groundwater table areas. Yes.
okay,
That's the intent. I can't say today exactly
Sure.
where, but the intent is to take it away from these other areas that are associated with the truck routes.
besides, oh, sorry, go ahead. Besides all the, the just sheer complexities of the engineering of this, what are some of the other challenges that you see, Rob, in terms of trying to get this done in the most efficient way? Is there anything
For new construction or this current
for
activity?
the current project?
Current activity really is just getting Victor to start Monday and just plow forward. We're going to start at C Street and work our way south, and we'll get as far as we can before everyone gets here. I'm confident that we're going to have South Beach Street up and running, Broad Street, everything, that whole area. We're simultaneously expecting him to finish the sidewalk improvements on Straight Wharf as well. So there's a lot of concentrated activity before Daffodil that's moving forward.
Thank you.
So is Daffodil your target?
That is. Yep.
And maybe a question for the town. Have we given any help in terms of background and backup to the businesses that are affected? I'm assuming that they've got business interruption insurance and all of that, but...
We're going to be we've already had one, right after, we had a meeting about the cleanup and the decontamination and stuff, and we're planning another meeting for next Thursday?
Next
15th?
Thursday, the 15th.
That will invite, it'll be similar. We're inviting the residents and businesses to get updated on the plans for the road reconstruction and the timeline. And they've been invited already. Rob's had a couple of sessions of the sidewalk options that they've been invited to. And,
Great sessions.
Very good feedback on
Good.
that.
I've watched them on TV.
We actually got a little bit of lucky here with regard to sidewalks and just getting ideas out. We had sidewalk sessions planned specific to Easy Street and Broad to sort of continue from the Straight Wharf and the first part of Easy Street that we are accomplishing or just accomplished to sort of continue to make the corner. And so this happened right before the first or just after the first session started. And so with that in mind, actually it was just before the first session started. So we had one in January, one in February. So it happened to coincide with the break, and we were able to get a lot of participation early in this to be able to bring to bear, a lot of really good ideas in this whole corridor.
So is it safe to assume that you would like to see option number 2 go forward?
Yes.
Makes
Great.
sense.
Any other questions for these guys?
Yeah, not like it helps now, but I'm considering the life expectancy of that pipe is coming to an end. It takes us a while to do anything. Do we have to refocus, and we have a lot of priorities on capital projects? Do we now have to refocus on our whole sewer system? Because we've spent tens of millions of dollars downtown through different phases. So it's almost like, where were we headed with this pipe? It's almost like it snuck up on us, but it shouldn't have snuck up on us because it only had 14 years left of a 50-year life. So did we not? Did I miss?
It snuck up on us. I'd say that the break that happened on January 4th, if the forensics come back to confirm what the thinking is, it was a situation that people could not have foreseen. We have well underway the CMOM program, the Capacity Maintenance
Yep.
Operations
Management.
Thank you. And there, you can see in the capital, there are a lot of sewer capital projects.
Oh,
And
yeah.
if this hadn't happened, we were about to camera the other force main that we're now on. And once that had happened, we probably would have done the same with this one.
Okay.
So there's a lot going on with the sewer system in any event.
Yeah.
I'll just add to that, and going down your thought process, I can't speak for the sewer department at all, but what I can say is that there's reports that go back to the early 1900s that talk about a lot of the same issues that we're discussing right now. When this force main was conceived, way back when we were discharging into the harbor, like full-time before the treatment plant, all that stuff. There's reports out there that are, I would definitely invite all of you to get a read on them because they definitely help set the stage for the challenges that exist downtown, both then and still exist there today, mostly with dealing with water and the high groundwater table from roof runoff to drainage. Keep in mind the drainage systems that were initially constructed tied directly into the sewers. The thought at the time was, to flush the sewers out. That is not standard practice today, but a lot of those lines exist. And so trying to deal with them is not as simple as just deciding to go fix them or replace them or upgrade them. Even doing a simple condition assessment, opening up the pipes or accessing the manholes and putting a camera down them, we can't do that in the downtown because they're full of water because they're in that flood zone and they're in a tidal area. So you have to, conditions have to be very, very ideal, which almost virtually never happen to even be able to get a traditional condition assessment of the stuff that we already own down there that we're having challenges with. So the sewer department has, if this has done nothing more than to raise the specter of capital investment and are we investing in the right locations at the right times and those sort of questions. It's what is connected to our sewer system that shouldn't be, and how are we going to address that as a community. It's not very simple. It's a very complex situation where we're going to have to provide, in my opinion, capacity in our drain systems to take all of these sump pumps and roof leaders and different connections that are currently getting into our sewer system, being pumped at great expense over across town to be treated. Just a glimpse from this past event that we just had this past weekend. Director Gray told us that the flows at the treatment plant on 3-1 were just over 800,000 gallons. On 3-3, the plant registered 4.5 million gallons. If anything, people left, there weren't more people using the toilet. So that's sort of just an idea of what's going on. There's a lot of...
It's always been a challenge down there, and I know that's why we replaced a lot of pipes downtown, is the infiltration of salt water and everything.
Sure.
Yeah, so maybe that's where our focus should be. I guess maybe we have a handle on it.
I think the focus, too, is on properties that aren't built up yet, too. And where does their water go? I know we experienced that even with the building of the dorm. Where are you putting your roof leaders going forward? You can't just spill it into the street anymore. You can't tie it into a secret pipe.
Well, we almost need a dedicated person to go around and constantly check these connections because you find one, unhook it, get it done, and as soon as you turn your back, it comes back in.
Well, that's it. I think the successful systems I've seen in the past is to provide provide capacity for the ability to to handle those flows into a drain system. Typically, if it's a sump pump or something like that that has the potential for some kind of illicit discharge, like a ruptured fuel tank or something like that in someone's basement, those sort of connections have to be tied back to the deed. So there's a responsible party at the end of it if you're allowing it into the town's infrastructure. So you don't end up with an oil slick on the harbor and the town doesn't know where it came from or doesn't have any means to go back and find a liable party. So that can all be worked through. That's just a legal effort. It's physically constructing the capacity in the pipe to handle that flow. We're seeing more intense rains more frequently than we've ever seen before. The climate change is real. It's happening, and we're all going to be party to it. So we're dealing with projects over Consu Springs. We're going back and actually looking to redesign that to handle what it's expected to flow now, not something that they looked at doing 2 years or 3 years ago. Things are changing, and they're changing fast.
Great. Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thanks. So,
Thank you very much.
thank you very much. Very comprehensive, Paul. Thank you for coming and for all your work, your company's work.
You guys want this back? Is this yours?
That's for David.
So, Libby, do you want us to vote on this?
Yeah, Brian and I were just chatting about it, and we'll have to, I'm not sure what
So we're voting on what to borrow the money, is that what it is?
Well, I think on the amount, I think SRF, the state's sewer fund is going to pay for some of it, and then we're going to have to pay for some of it, and there may be something back from the insurance company.
Stabilization fund.
Of what you sent?
Cash.
From the 3
It's
o'clock.
going to be borrowed, or it's coming from.
It's at the very bottom, the costs associated with sewer force main failure. So the idea is that we borrow the entire amount, 5.3, under the emergency loan application, the SRF. It's paid back to the sewer enterprise. And the difference between that and 5 point whatever for the sidewalk will come from the
Free cash?
sidewalk improvement.
Oh,
project.
sidewalk improvement.
And that doesn't need to be in here because that'll just happen as a matter of
Okay,
cycle.
so are we voting on the 5.2 or the 5 or the 5.4?
The 5.3.
Is that the exact number?
It was 5,304%. We have probably $200,000 worth.
It's 5304977.
Yeah, you're voting on the total bottom number of
We're
34.
rounding.
So for the sake of my education, we're not doing a debt exclusion. We have money to service the debt through,
So it's being paid through the enterprise.
okay.
Through the enterprise.
Through the rates.
All right, so perhaps two parts to this. If we want to indicate we support one option over another, we should make that notation,
Sure.
which might help the selectmen in their decision.
Yeah.
And the second would be, we would be taking a vote on the 5.304.
We'll be taking a vote on the total Article 12, which is the 34,250, which includes $5,300,000
Okay.
to authorize
They
the
haven't
borrowing of
voted
that
on,
amount.
they haven't voted on the total yet.
No, they have not. We're waiting to put that number in, so we didn't need to do a technical. We're not going to go to the penny of 5,304 because there's contingency and we think we're.
That's
okay.
fine, I'm trying to figure out how, if we so desire, we signal which option that the Finance Committee favors, and also recognize that we just have to vote on the 5.304 or whatever the number is.
Yeah, just vote the 34
Yeah.
million.
So, is there can we take which option, get a sense of the committee as to which option we would like to,
I certainly support the 5.6,
Option 2.
Me
option
too.
2, fix the sidewalks.
Yep,
A second.
I thirded it.
I mean, it seems like a good idea. We don't have much to go on as far as, the price for the, marginal work here. It tends to make sense to do things at the same time, so I expect that it's the right thing to do. But, this isn't the same level of rigor we would put to a $391,000 project under normal circumstances, so.
The pavement is still $240 a ton.
Well, it looks to me like the difference is primarily the sidewalks.
Right.
And I just make that point because we, apply different levels of rigor to things based on how they come up. I do think that all these things need to be done, and they are in a plan to be done eventually. Is that right?
I mean, I think,
Yeah.
although
Yeah,
in
so-
the past, when we took a vote on the sidewalk, we just took a a number was presented. And then how the work gets done and what it costs is really up to.
Right.
It's Capcom.
These are based on unit pricing from the existing contracts.
Right.
And the delta's 390, 600.
Yep.
So just to reflect on
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
mobilizations.
So $391,000 projects get more review than we're able to give it today. I'm just, making that point. I do think that I've never seen a situation where it doesn't make sense to do, an adjacent project when you're already on site. So I assume that it makes sense. I'm in favor of doing it.
Okay.
Me too.
All those.
Can we just get a motion on the options? You want to make a motion on?
What do we do?
You need a motion on option 2, can you not?
Yes.
And I seconded
Or
it.
1.
Well, don't you just need a motion on Article 11 and then?
No, we're-
12.
Article 12, sorry.
No, but we're going to come back to that because that's not the 5-6. We're not voting on the 5-6. We're just voting on
5-3.
5-3 as part of Article 11.
So we're making a motion to make a
We're basically-
recommendation to the board?
Selectmen.
Yeah, okay.
So we're making a motion that we recommend to the selectmen that
To
they
do option
pursue
2.
option 2.
They do option
Okay?
It's moved by.
Okay, so then the first thing, I guess, we need a motion to adopt Article 12 as written in the current draft of the warrant.
Second.
2. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Now, can we get a motion on which option to recommend to the selectmen?
Okay, so I'll make a motion to recommend to the Board of Selectmen that we pursue option 2.
Second.
Okay. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So I think the net result of this is, Brian, that we...
Got it.
Article 11 is
since
Article
approved.
12.
Article 12 is approved.
Article 12 is approved.
Is this different from what you
Yeah,
did here earlier?
there was a typo in the one.
This is quick.
Yeah.
Wow.
Good thing there's computers upstairs, to be honest with
Wow.
you. So the one that we
So did
actually
we
should
go
be looking
down
at.
500?
We did, yes. And that was it consistent with the discussion that we had yesterday. My apologies, the one I handed out earlier actually left Ireland Home at the original number. So it's taken down by almost 500,000, as we did discuss and mention yesterday. Based on the changes that have been recommended and are being internally discussed, we left a little bit of some of the personnel changes untouched, so that if there's a change from the number of beds, we have some flexibility to be able to go in the opposite direction of where we think we're trending. So the net change is about $500,000 down from what you saw that original Saturday in discussions.
On revenue or expense?
On both. We took it down. We've increased the amount of retained earnings slightly as well, and we took revenue down about $600,000 as well. So, and that is consistent with the trend that we have seen over the last 2.5 quarters, heading towards the third quarter. And we have been discussing this with Rachel, who has been discussing this with the incoming administrator. So everybody there is aware of what we've been seeing. So.
Okay.
So the bottom line total for enterprise funds is the $42,843,698. And all other, I will tell you that all other enterprise funds have reviewed these numbers and have consistent and signed off and said that they are correct. So.
Comments?
Is the use of retained earnings by our island home in line with prior years?
It's slightly higher because we have we've kept our the 2 years ago we reduced the amount of subsidy from the general fund and increased the usage of retained earnings, and because we did not increase back to the 2 year ago level, we increased it slightly this year to account for that delta.
Okay, thank you.
Brian, would you mind, I know you've done this for me or for us before, but the Ireland home runs at a gigantic loss, but there's a timing situation so that
what the subsidy,
Sure.
the fact that there's retained earnings, I always find.
Right. Well, so
mind-boggling.
the majority of retained earnings are created by what's known as certified public expenditures, and it's a subsidy, yes, but DOR will not allow us to budget for that number because it is essentially at the pleasure of the legislature on what the reimbursement level will be, if there's a reimbursement, and how that all works. And because it's not a consistent revenue source, even though we are getting it still every year, in DOR's mind, it's not consistent enough that we could actually rely on a predictable number, so they do not let us borrow it. And that typically comes in anytime between January and June, and it is what essentially is creating the extreme amount of retained earnings that we have. So that's why that we run at that loss. So it really is kind of timing, but it's also a municipal finance not being able to have that count as a revenue source.
I mean, I guess what I find confusing is, we have this, the solid waste that sort of has an explicit subsidy from the general fund, and this, it always confuses me why it just doesn't say that we have an explicit subsidy of $4 million. That's what it is. It's it looks like we have retained earnings when it's just this timing difference.
It's really timing, but you're right.
Are we still one of two?
We're still one of two at this point. I'm not entirely sure what is happening with the other one, but we still are one of two at this point.
One and a half.
Do we have any advice from our state representatives about what might happen to our funding? It's been talked about in the past that if that other facility might close, then there would be a loss of political will to
subsidize. We haven't broached that
subsidize.
subject with anybody as of yet.
Well, they
So-
haven't, they don't know.
Okay.
Oh,
They
they,
have to
okay,
discuss it.
yeah. I haven't been involved in those, I'm sorry
Yeah.
to say that.
It's probably not something you want to ask too many people about because they realize, hey, that's a quick way to save some money.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But at the same time, we don't want the rug pulled out from under us in a year where we need it, which is every year.
Right.
Okay. Shall we, motion to adopt?
Motion to adopt Article 11 as written in this draft handed to us most recently.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Brian.
All right, maybe don't go away, because they didn't do 10.
Oh, they didn't do 10? I'm sorry. Sure.
They're just saying 10.
Yeah, yes, in the warrant, yep.
We saved 10.
Is that 8 million?
Did I understand, I'm sorry, I didn't know if you guys, Rob's comment that the extra $390,000 for the sewer project on South Beach is going to be just come from reallocating some of these funds?
It's going to actually come from currently appropriated either island sidewalk articles that we've had, which was consistent with the downtown area already, and then island-wide road repairs. In order to do it, it has to be an article that already exists in funding. It can't be one that we're waiting for funding. Yes, so
Which is
it's
the $1
articles that
million,
already
right?
exist.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
so some projects are going to be postponed until he'll use the money for this project.
Well, I think potentially, and his thinking was that the 1.5 million or so that was approved already for downtown sidewalk improvements, that's the name of the project, included South Beach Street as it was. Maybe it's a little bit different, but.
I
So,
Bless you.
Do we still face the HTC or whoever it was when we redo sidewalks? We have to save the bricks instead of get new bricks. We still putting up with that?
that I don't know. I don't actually have to face them about bricks.
We'll do what we can to make it look appropriate.
So there's a windfall. We get to sell all those bricks on eBay, historic Nantucket bricks.
Peter, didn't you have floating bricks after last weekend? Didn't I read that you had bricks?
Floating bricks? Not
Floating
sure
bricks
about-
around?
Any questions on the capital? It's going to be coming basically from free cash from the town,
Nope.
as set forth in Article 10.
Fine by me.
Move approval.
For a second?
Second.
Can I ask a question?
Please do.
Looking at it here, did we do anything with the administrative building,
For,
school?
no, we did not.
Okay,
No.
okay, thank you.
Not in there.
We had a discussion, but I think that if they choose to consider pursuing that, it would come before Capcom all over again
Okay.
in discussion.
Because I know we had a meeting and then,
Yeah.
okay,
That-
thank you.
So,
Just trying to tie it
How
up.
much have you raised through an increase in the tax levy?
for
Capital?
898,000 is within there from operating, and then there's 1.5 million in capital exclusions within there.
Okay.
Yes, and at the bottom of Article 10 in that motion, it does lay out the $1.5 million and says it is contingent upon passage of the capital exclusion at the ballot, subject to Chapter 59, Section 21C, I think it is, if I remember correctly.
59, Section 21C. And
So,
very good, Brian.
So how big will the debt exclusion, in terms of the vote after a town meeting?
it will be, there's a capital exclusion for 1.5, and there's debt exclusions of about 23 or 20, so it's about $25 million of exclusions that would be on the ballot, thereabouts.
And they have to be voted for each individual?
The debt exclusions are separate individual articles and then separate individual ballot questions, that's correct. The capital exclusion is one shot, yes.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor to approve. A second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. That conclude our proceedings. Did we get to, we had something we were working on, but I think we got through Article 35 on our comment, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
We're going to visit whether or not to put an article in the paper.
Oh,
Yes.
That's correct.
That's what we had discussed.
So what's the sense on that?
Just to add, I mean, it occurred to me today, just because Mr. Dickler has written to the, had a letter published, he's taken an ad out, and as I think Stephen mentioned earlier today, most people are going to, if they look at the warrant the day of, it's a day or two before, do we help ourselves, or do we hurt ourselves to take a more public stand and put that comment in the form of a letter to the paper?
I can relay a conversation that I had with the publisher of the newspaper a couple of weeks ago, and this question, it was a discussion about what's coming up and all of that, and Mr. Dickler has obviously been to see Mary Ann and Josh and crew. She was not suggesting much sympathy or support for the article. So I don't know if she would even editorialize on it.
She doesn't believe that there will be much support for the artiel, or she
No,
personally doesn't?
She didn't say that she wasn't supporting, but just
Right.
given the derisive term she was using, I would assume that she was not in favor of. I think she thought it was a little bit of a harebrained. But, the question, I guess, is, do you think he's generating enough publicity about it that it's worth talking about?
I don't get out much, but I haven't heard anybody talking about it. Nobody at the office has mentioned it. Pretty much there and home, and doesn't come up at home either.
you know, I don't feel that strongly about it. I just,
Yeah.
all right.
Well, the only thing I think of, though, Joe, to your point, when you sit through town meeting, the things that people pick up the flag and run with always astound me. You know, I'm 5 feet tall, and this is how much taller the buildings are going to be, as an example from last town meeting. And the bike path in Tom Nevers, which had babies being run over by cars. I mean, we do get a contingent at town meeting that might be useful to inform ahead of town meeting.
Is there a Facebook group for annual town meeting 18? I mean, usually there's something that's there, and then there's like long comment threads about certain things, and that's, you know, a good warning, I guess, for, you know, what people are talking about. Not warning, it's a...
You know, I heard a thought also. You haven't really done this, but, you know, some towns, and I think you've talked about it in prior years, you could do a FinCom report for town meeting. We could potentially put it in the guide. I'm about to start working on the guide we've been doing for the warrant articles. We don't usually put anything in the guide about citizen articles, but you had your report, you'll have the comment, of course, in the morning, but if you wanted to do some kind of a report.
Does that set precedent?
The other thing
Yeah,
we
I
talked
know.
about last year, and we're having a discussion about, is doing some short video vignettes and posting them on individual warrant articles.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah, that's a good idea, I think, because people are interested in certain articles and maybe not the whole warrant, and they'll watch, you know,
No, I don't
90
think
seconds on the thing that they're interested in.
I mean, if we were to do something, it seems to me a little bit of background on actually our process, so that people know that, you know, we're reasonably diligent about this,
Yeah.
and that the town's is very diligent about getting.
Well, you could
And the
make
capital
you could
committee.
make somebody sit through 20 or 30 seconds explanation about the process before they get to whatever article they clicked on to view. That might be good for us and for everyone else.
Could
On demand with commercials.
And then don't give them
That's right.
don't give them
Could you-
in 5 seconds you
I
can
don't
skip
think we
this
would be
ad.
violating the open meeting law if you all were to identify a couple of articles that you think ought to be, we ought to think about whether we did some video on and send them to me. We can do that, can't we? We just can't have a discussion amongst the
Yeah.
folks.
just- yeah.
We just have to write to you individually, isn't
Right,
that
and
correct?
don't copy everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Write to you and CC Stephen?
Why don't we just start?
Just to you?
Send it
Just-
to me,
Okay,
and I'll put the stuff together,
okay.
and then we can, maybe we need to have a quick meeting, just so that we can conduct business and do that. And I guess the question is, would all of you be willing to take an article and volunteer to sit in front of a
Sure.
Audio?
visual, Peter, visual?
Yeah.
Come on, Peter, you have movie star written all over
Oh,
you.
yeah.
Then we have to identify them first.
You know-
That's the first step, right?
Usually after town meeting, I bring this up, but years ago, like, I think it was in the 60s, they used to do, Finance Committee would host like a dry run of town meeting, and they'd go through all of the articles, and they'd invite the public, and you'd start at one and go all the way through. We do that. You know, that's what this whole process is the public's invited to have these discussions, but people are busy, and then, you know, they tune in a couple days before. You know, I wonder if maybe so it's not a public meeting, we just have, you know, a few of us offer to go through these things, or maybe we make it a public meeting and we post it, and it's, you know, the Friday before town meeting, and we invite people here. You know, so now there's a focus on these issues, and you say, you know, we'll go from one all the way through. Sort of like, you know, the town moderator's pre-town meeting conference. If nobody raises their hand for something, you don't talk about it, but you're there prepared to talk about any issue.
I thought the Civic League does that.
Yeah, Civic League picks a few, but they don't have, in some cases, they don't have any input from the Finance Committee. You know, they might have one person from Planning or one person from the Board of Selectmen, or maybe one person from the Finance Committee.
Well, for the special town meeting in the fall, they actually did it a little differently, and I thought was good, which is
They had
they
a...
asked me to moderate,
Hmm.
and then because they liked the he said, she said, you know, they had opposing views or whatever you want to call them. So that's where Randy Ringer came, and he talked about, you know, his bike path, and we had a pretty good conversation about it, and I thought that was a format that was a lot better than some of the others they have run.
Right.
But I don't know what I haven't been contacted by them, so I have no idea what they're planning on doing this year.
Another thing you might want to think about is we have a kind of a new thing with the radio station called Town Talk. I don't know if anybody's heard it. It's on Saturdays and Sunday mornings, but it's taped earlier in the week. And they've been going sort of through the department heads to get them to come in. They get interviewed for, I don't know, 45 minutes or something, and then they play it on Saturday and Sunday mornings, I think at noon maybe. It's not video, but if you want to do that, that might be just another way to get out the word of the process. You wouldn't probably go through every single article, but you could pick out some of the ones that might have the most discussion.
Is it something that you could participate in as well? I mean, could it
Sure.
become more of a sort of a dialogue of?
Yeah, I'm willing to do whatever
Rather than
you guys think.
monologue.
The video,
Who moderates?
on the radio, it's Chris Reiser, the morning sort of news guy. I do my weekly
With him?
thing with him
Or her?
after BOS. Laura Burnett is the one who's been arranging everybody, so I could give her your contact info and she could talk to you about it. Are you thinking for the video that we would get NCTV to do something like that? Like who would video?
You know, I talked a little bit with Jason because
Yeah.
he and Rita were,
Yeah.
you know, doing their, and
Yeah,
I don't
and
I
he's
don't know
going to
how-
do a thing, I think, himself on town meeting.
Yeah.
It's not quite like what you're
I
talking
mean,
about.
the production values are,
Yeah.
Their Facebook thing is pretty useful, though. They're 2 minutes. That always is
Yeah.
7 to 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and
well,
I-
and that's what we were modeling this
Yeah.
after, is
Yeah.
that it would be a,
that's actually pretty useful.
Yeah, I'm envisioning a place, you know, that there's a page with all of the articles that we have videos for with links to the various videos, you know, so people
I
can
wonder if we could try to
be
do
directed there, you know, when they say,
Yeah.
nobody told me about this, and you say,
Yeah.
why don't you go check it out? It's up.
I wonder if we could try to do, like, I mean, I don't know if this is too not formal enough, but we could have Florencia do, like, just an iPhone videos for whatever articles you want. We could do it in here, we could do it wherever, and then she could just post them as a series maybe on the town website, on the town meeting page.
Yeah, I think the most important thing, but you know, aside from production quality, or more important than that, is that the videos are short
Yeah.
and that we cover most of the important topics. You know, and then that'll be enough of a test where for special next in the fall or for next year,
Yeah.
we know if it was worthwhile and if we should do it again.
so why don't you send me your thoughts on which articles you think we ought to cover, and we'll call them down, and, you know, maybe we do 10 or 15.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And then we'll also explore maybe doing this radio audio thing, which I don't know how big the listening audience is.
I'm not sure either. I keep forgetting about it, so I never actually listened to it.
What, your piece?
No, well, mine and the town talk.
Oh, okay.
Joanna hosts a radio
Yeah.
twice a week, or doesn't
does
she?
something too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have a pro on the team here.
Yeah, she probably be a good
Yeah. She keeps calling me to come on, like,
person. Laura's will go over
I'm sure.
There you go.
Okay.
And I have to uncancel my cancel vacation.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
Nobody wants to adjourn.
I just made a motion to adjourn.
So So moved. Second.
Thank you.
What is the Roberts rule on that? You need a motion and a second, but no vote? Or, honestly, I don't know. All these meetings, I don't.
Is there a second?
Ian
We're
Russell.
supposed to vote to adjourn the meeting, right?
Yeah,
No,
no.
we never do.
All right.
I think we've got meetings open from years ago.
Is there a second?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye. Look at that.
Anybody opposed?
No.
Worse than